Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today in this video we're going to be diving deep into Landman Season 1, a show that brings us into a gritty world of oil drilling with some intense family drama and corporate intrigue. The show, starring Billy Bob Thornton as Tommy Norris, our main protagonist, takes us to Midland, Texas, where personal and professional lives collide in dangerous and dramatic ways. In this review we're going to be covering key plot points, character developments, pacing, themes, and of course, the emotional depth of the season. Now let's go ahead and drill into it. The season starts with a bang in episode 1, where Tommy finds himself held hostage by a Mexican cartel over land rights, specifically the oil underneath it. From the get-go, we're introduced to the stakes of the show, power struggles, and the life and death consequences of owning land that fuels the oil industry. This theme of power plays out in various forms throughout the season as Tommy navigates the treacherous waters of corporate life, family responsibilities, and cartel threats. Family is a huge focus here, with Tommy's complicated relationships with his ex-wife, Angela, who he unofficially remarries midway through the season as more of an estranged wife, his daughter, Ainsley, and his son, Cooper. While Tommy works to keep his friend's oil company afloat, his children are facing their own personal struggles, especially Ainsley, who has a rough start to the season dealing with a quarterback who's full of himself and has to deal with some unfortunate heartbreak. Meanwhile, Cooper is beginning his journey into the oil business to take after his old man, and while he's eager to learn it all and eventually start his own company, he's quickly introduced to the dangers of the industry itself in a horrifying way by seeing his entire three-man crew blown up right before him. This season also shows us the volatile nature of the oil field itself, from blowouts to deadly accidents, and how those risks impact the lives of Tommy's crew and their families. And of course, Tommy's relationship with Monty, played by John Hamm, his business partner and CEO of MTEX, adds more tension as Monty's health issues become a liability for the company by season's end. Throughout the season, the cartel issues continue to ramp up, especially as Tommy deals with the dangerous business side of the oil world. He finds himself in a brutal confrontation that nearly costs him his life, and in the season finale, Tommy is tortured by Jimenez, only for Gallino to appear in the last moment, saving him in a bloody showdown. Gallino's appearance seems like it'll have a higher stake and lead to a major storyline for season 2, especially as Tommy officially becomes president of MTEX, as Monty unfortunately flatlines with his family, who are grief-stricken by his bedside. Now let's talk about the characters, because the show brings them to life in a really authentic way. Tommy is the heart of the show, and we have Billy Bob Thornton to thank for that, who was nominated for Best Actor in the Golden Globes. He's tough as nails, but his vulnerabilities come through in his complicated relationships. Over the course of the season, we see him grapple with past mistakes, face the realities of fatherhood, and come to terms with the emotional cost of his high-risk job. He's really tough on the outside, but his journey toward redemption from his past really adds emotional weight to the story. We learn at a lunch conversation with him, Angela, Ainsley, and Rebecca at the Patch, talking about what they used to have and a very special engagement that Tommy did for Angela. But the problem was that they had as much as they could possibly want, and then they lost it all when the market crashed. And as Angela emotionally tells Rebecca, they lost everything from a past mistake. So Tommy's hoping that this same mistake doesn't happen again. Angela's character also undergoes significant growth. At the beginning of the season, she is estranged from Tommy, but over time, we see her soften and reconnect with him in some humorous ways, of course, especially as they work through their family dynamics. Her relationship with her daughter Ainsley is a little complicated. She's a mother trying to protect her daughter while also trying to rebuild her own life and have some fun and find new ways to connect with her, like when she tries to take out the elderly folks at the retirement home out to a strip club and play games and buy them drinks and so forth. Angela's emotional journey isn't just about dealing with Tommy, but also with the challenges of being a mother in a tough world. By the season's end, her reconnection with Tommy and her relationship with Ainsley, who is finally starting to open up, shows a family beginning to heal. Angela's strength, vulnerability, and wit make her a standout character as the season progresses. Ainsley starts the season heartbroken and rebellious, but slowly begins to find her way back to herself. Her journey is full of personal growth as she learns to deal with her own emotions and the realization realization that her father isn't just a tough oil man, but a complex human being with his own flaws. As she finds comfort with Larter, a new college quarterback, Ainsley finally feels like she's found someone special. It's a promising shift that after so many emotional ups and downs. Cooper is the surprise standout of the season in my opinion. At first, he seems like the typical naive rookie, or worm as they call it, but as the season goes on, we see him step up, not only as a worker in the field, but as someone who is trying to navigate a special evolving relationship and business. His dynamic with Ariana, a young woman and mother tied to a tragic death of her husband Elvio, adds layers to his character by how much he genuinely wants to help her. His journey is one of growth as he navigates both his professional responsibilities and his emotional connection with Ariana. Demi of Monty, of course, played by John Hamm, whose role in the corporate world adds to the show's corporate tension. His deteriorating health becomes a major concern for Tommy and his wife Cammy, played by Demi Moore, and watching Monty's business decisions while dealing with his personal struggles is incredibly well done. Monty's relationship with his wife Cammy is tested throughout the season as they try to balance the demands of work and their personal lives as she reminds him to take his pills, relax, engage with the body, exercise, swim in the pool. The two characters share moments of tenderness, but Monty's continued health problems cast a shadow over their future, adding to the complexity of his character. Finally, there's Rebecca, the young, fiery Larter, who starts off seemingly cold and calculating. She's all business at first, but as the season progresses, we see her character evolve a bit, especially when she gets a based lesson from Tommy in the finale. She begins to confront her moral boundaries, even after breaking them in some cases when she makes some threats to Cooper, especially when it comes to messy legal dealings of the oil industry. Her evolving dynamic with Tommy is fascinating as she goes from strict professional who despises him to someone who feels the weight of the industry's human cost and learns that Tommy is the acting boss while Monty's in the hospital. Even though Monty says that you should trust her, Tommy tells Rebecca that he needs her because she's a strong closer, she's a killer, pertaining to the deals that he needs her to close. With a show like Landman, pacing is key when it comes to this sort of material. And I have to say, it did a pretty good job overall of balancing some of the slower exposition, character-driven moments with bursts of high stakes and action or very interesting pivotal moments. Earlier on, the show sets up the characters and the world they live in and what they're up against. It can feel a bit slow in the first few episodes, especially as we get to know the characters' backstories and motivations, but as the tension builds, especially with the cartel and the oil crisis that they face, the pace picks up and it doesn't really let go. The blowout in episode 1 and the violent fight scenes and the cartel confrontations gives us the danger we are looking for in a show like this, while emotional beats like Tommy's conversations with his children and the widows of their fallen workers really adds an extra layer of depth. The pacing flows rather well between these moments, making sure we really never lose sight of the character-driven drama and the thrilling high-risk environment they work in. Pertaining to the themes in Landman, at its core, it's about power, control, and moral compromise. The oil industry, and more specifically the oil beneath the land, represents the drive for power, and Tommy's role as a landman highlights the moral dilemmas that come with that power. Who controls the land? Who gets the profit from it? Who suffers in the process? The show asks these questions, but it doesn't offer easy answers. Family is another key theme here, as we can all see. Tommy's relationship with his son, daughter, and wife are constantly tested by the dangers of the oil field and the choices he alone makes. We see Tommy's love for his children, even if it's often expressed as tough and sometimes abrasive ways. His search for redemption and his complicated feelings about his past mistakes make for an emotional ride. Instead of having roommates with his lawyer Nate and his friend Dale, he'd like to eventually live in his own home with his family again. The show tackles moral compromise, especially through characters like Rebecca. And while I mentioned she's a cold and calculating figure, forced to confront her own ethical boundaries, there's a reason she's portrayed this way, because the show doesn't shy away from showing that no one in this sort of world is entirely good or bad, because she alone has made threats, but she's also tried to do good for the sake of Monty and MTEX, and eventually Tommy as well. Instead, they're people that are forced to make tough decisions in order to survive in Landman. And despite the heavy themes that we've talked about, the show also delivers some much needed humor. Tommy's dry and sarcastic wit is the hallmark of this show, especially in the interactions with his crew. Whether he's joking with Monty or making fun of Ryder with Ainsley, or trying to talk about Bible study, or throwing a snide remark at the absurdity that the world they live in, or talking to his wife because he's just had a long and tiring day, these moments provide a welcome break for the intense drama that he usually Ainsley deals with on a daily basis. Ainsley also adds some lighter moments, particularly where her witty remarks about her unfortunate experiences with men and growing up as a very attractive teenage daughter seems like a tough environment because these city boys don't really know too much of where she grew up. These moments of levity don't diminish the show's emotional depth. Instead, they remind us that even in the harshest conditions, people find a way to laugh and connect. One of the best lines in the show comes at the end where Tommy says to Rebecca as he drives away in his truck, "There is an alternative. You can throw your phone away and trade that Mercedes in for a bicycle or a horse and start hunting your own food and start living in a tent, but you'll be the only one and it won't make a damn bit of difference. Plus, I hear the moral high ground gets real windy at night." The acting in Landman is really one of the standout aspects of the show. Billy Bob Thornton delivers an absolutely gripping performance. Obviously, otherwise he wouldn't have been nominated. He has the perfect balance of toughness, vulnerability, and humor, and it's this complexity that anchors the entire series. Whether he's handling the cartel confrontation or having a tender moment with his kids, Thornton is magnetic in every scene. You can see the emotional weight of Tommy's decisions on his face throughout the entire season, and it's that rawness is what makes his performance so compelling. Ainsley, played by Michelle Randolph, whose portrayal of a young woman navigating heartbreak, family struggles, and self-discovery is actually pretty layered. She starts off the season with this rebellious attitude, but as she faces the harsh realities of her life, we see her soften and mature just a little bit. I think Michelle did a good job of portraying Ainsley's young emotions as she deals with love, loss, and growing into herself. Cooper, portrayed by Jacob Laughlin, is a really great surprise to this season. He's not the best looking dude, and at first he seems like the naive rookie, as I mentioned earlier, but this actor brings depth to the character's growth. Cooper's relationship with Ariana is one of the highlights of his arc, and you can see the actor's chemistry with Paulina Chavez, who plays Ariana. Their interactions feel real, genuine, filled with both tenderness and a quiet understanding of each other's pain. John Hamm, playing Monty, adds a lot of gravitas to the corporate side of the show. His character could have easily been a one-note corporate boss and boring, but of course, John Hamm, being the great actor that he is, really brings a sense of vulnerability to Monty as he struggles with his health and the weight of his decisions for MTechs. The dynamic between Monty and Cammy, played by Demi Moore, is also one to watch for. The two have a seemingly complicated relationship, and the tension between their personal lives add layers to Monty's character, especially as his heart issues complicate everything. And let's not forget Angela, played by Larter, and her ability to go from a tough and protective to vulnerable in moments with her children, especially her daughter Ainsley. It really adds emotional depth of the show. She really does a great job, especially with her interactions with Tommy, and understanding some of the depth of what he deals with, especially when they're on the way to go see Monty, when they have to make a stop by one of the wells, and she sees the death of a character who's literally crushed by the weight of a ton of metal pipes. And you can see her character's emotional growth throughout the season, from being an estranged wife to a reconciled partner with Tommy. It's a testament of her acting skills in balancing strength and vulnerability. In terms of the favorite moments for me this season, or things that really stuck with me from an impact or storytelling perspective, was definitely the end with Tommy being interrogated and tortured by Jimenez in the strip club bar or underneath in the back when he gets a nail driven into his leg, dumping gasoline on him, beating him, smashing his hand with a hammer. But of course, what happens after that when Gaino essentially saves him and kills all the cartel members because he understands the value of working with Tommy and wants to go back to the way things were. Also, when Colonel Ivy is saying that the National Guard were practicing with mortars and a helicopter saw some of the vans get blown up and that there might be some deaths involved, well, it's kind of what Tommy warned them might happen and why they're there. All the humorous parts, of course, were great, and obviously, again, that's thanks to Billy Bob Thornton. And I'd also include some of the moments between him and Ainsley and just how compassionate he was, but how funny the whole thing was about, saying, I don't want you to tell me the truth. I want you to lie to me, just so I can try to tune it out of my head, but I still really know what's going on, like with the whole Bible study thing and not really believing it. But Angela somehow finds a way to allow Tommy just to kind of let it go. And who knew that Jerry Jones could kind of act in some way? I didn't really know that he was going to be in the show until the 9th episode. And interestingly enough, the conversation he has between him and Monty, telling him about his success and how he was able to get and purchase the Dallas Cowboys and what he built. And the real main focus of that was to be able to work with with his kids, and that was where the joy actually came from. And he's also side talking and telling Tommy once Tommy shows up in the hospital room to, he's not young either and needs to take this for advice, which I think Tommy does. You really understand what he's talking about, especially comes to the finale episode. Unfortunately, it's not something that Monty is able to put to practice. He's not able to really take Jerry Jones's advice and spending time with his kids because he might have to have a heart transplant, and obviously at that point it really depends on if he can actually withstand a new organ. The emotional depth of the show can't be overstated, and it just talks about how the dangers of the oil patch and the corporate power struggles, and it's about the toll that this life takes on the people that are involved. Sure, it pays well, but it comes at the cost of their own lives perhaps. You can really feel the death of some of the workers that are hit hard in the first episode, and that the aftermath is felt by both families and the crew that remains. These moments underscore just how dangerous the industry is, and they weigh heavily on Tommy, who has to always deliver heartbreaking news to these families. The tragic loss of lives is such an unforgiving industry, and it adds layers of emotional depth to the series that highlights the human cost behind the business. I think it's important from an acting perspective, but also how Tommy realizes multiple times in this season just how precious life is, and understand that he needs to say the words "I love you" more to the people he truly loves, like when he calls Angela just to tell her that. And really, it's again a great performance from Billy Bob Thornton. And then there's the romantic subplot between Cooper and Ariana, which, while not the main focus, it provides a nice contrast to an otherwise intense drama. The relationship is grounded in the reality of their lives, and as they navigate their own grief and healing, we see a tenderness that contrasts with their harsh world that they inhabit. They keep getting interrupted by, the doorbell ringing, as almost it's a sign from God saying this shouldn't happen, but yet they want to try and make it work and see if they're actually meant to be together. The last few episodes really hit home on the theme of redemption, especially in Tommy's realization that his family is the one thing that matters most to him. And in the end, this season is as much about emotional growth as it is about the high-risk world of the oil industry and the business it involves. Overall, to wrap this season up, I think it delivers a compelling, gritty drama about the Norris family, the people involved, the power, those involved with MTechs and the other oil industries, and the price of doing business in one of the world's most dangerous industries that we know of. Again, it's not without its pacing issues early on, but once the action starts to pick up and the character arcs deepen, it becomes a really engaging experience. I think all the actors had standout performances, especially Billy Bob Thornton, and he really anchors all of the emotional beats because he has emotional connections with almost every character, even with Ariana, which isn't the best, but it still has an important factor in key message to play between him and his son Cooper. I think if you're a fan of a show like Yellowstone, Landman will definitely scratch that same itch in my opinion. It's a show that has similar themes with arcs of power, family, redemption, with enough tension and emotional depth to keep you hooked. I highly recommend checking this show out if you haven't already. It's one I'm recommending to a lot of people right now, and I can't wait to see what happens in season 2. Thanks for watching my full review of Landman season 1. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the season. Did it live up to your expectations? And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe for more reviews and breakdowns. See you on the next one. Cheers.